Hello, everyone. This is John Adolfi with the Lost World Museum, and we have Elfred Lee with us here today. And welcome, Elfred. Thank you for coming on here today.
Good to be with you, John.
Now, the reason why I asked Elfred on, our topic is going to be on Noah's Ark, but something very, very specific. One of our followers on Facebook told me about a book that I didn't even know existed. And here's the title of the book: The Unsolved Mystery of Noah's Ark by Mary Irwin. Now, I don't know if that name rings a bell or anything, but Mary Irwin was the wife of Jim Irwin, the colonel and astronaut who went to the moon, I believe, in 1971. And Alfred, you knew Jim Irwin, correct?
Oh, yes. Very well.
And you actually went up Mount Ararat in the 80s looking for Noah's Ark with Jim.
Yes, he went up on one of our expeditions.
Okay. So Jim's been, passed away for quite a while. And, in 2012, Mary, with the help of Bob Cornuke, and that may or may not ring a bell for some of you out there, he wrote the foreword to this book. She wrote this book. It's about a little over 100 pages long. And the one of the followers that sent me took some snapshots of the chapter on George Hagopian and how she doesn't really buy his story. Now, Alfred, what was your association and what is the significance of George Hagopian? Let's do that first.
All right. George Hagopian comes into the picture right when we came back from our first expedition in 1969. We went up with Fernand Navarra, who had seen wood and a construction in 1952, 53, and 55. He finally succeeded in reaching it and brought back wood to his home in France. He wrote a book, J'ai trouvé l'Arche de Noé. I have found the Ark of Noah. Well, it got a lot of stir, a lot of attention, and a group of us in Washington contracted with him to lead us up there, which we did in 69. But we came back with wood. I had it tested at the University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia, and they studied carbon dating, and the U.S. Forestry Department identified it as Quercus species of white oak. In the process of all of that, raising money to go back, we were going to have a big expedition. Now we knew where the wood was, and I received a letter. I was the treasurer and secretary-treasurer of the foundation. So I received this letter one day from Mary Board of Annapolis, Maryland. She was a real estate agent and had sold some property and a house to George Hagopian. She wrote a letter, and boy, I got on the phone right away. And she took me out to see George. He was in his 70s at the time, not in very good health, but we made a very close bond, very friendly, very a Christian man, and he had quite a story to tell. So I spent a year and a half writing and drawing, because my specialty is archaeological illustration. It's a highly specialized field that I trained more at Syracuse University where I think is where I met you first. And then London University, Cairo, Ankara University in Turkey, and Hebrew University in Jerusalem. And I've done actual digs. And so I have a lot of background in not only art, but in archaeological digs and identifying things we find. And then we identify them at the universities. In this case, it was Hebrew University and Ben Gurion University near Gaza. Have you heard of Gaza lately?
Sure.
You know. And so that's where I worked. And I was able to really reconstruct what George Hagopian saw. It's a long story. I don't know how much
No, that's
you
good.
want.
So George Hagopian, if you don't know the name, is an Armenian gentleman. He was, like Alfred said, in his 70s. Alfred met him in 1969, 1970. And he not only claimed to have seen Noah's Ark, but stood on Noah's Ark when he was a young boy. He went there twice.
Right,
and
at least.
he described the Ark to Alfred in great detail. And Alfred, like a crime scene investigator, like illustrating who the perpetrator is, drew the memories. And I'll throw up on the screen here what the painting illustration looked like, but I'm going to show you, a model of Noah's Ark, almost in proportion. Some of this perhaps smaller up here as far as the width, but very closely to the Ark that was described by George Hagopian. Some consider
lift it up because it's black, and you're dressing in black. Lift it up. Yeah, put it in. There you go. It shows the roof and the windows along the roof. That's right. Now you can run it horizontal, and there we go. That's very good. Well done.
So the book that Mary wrote had some very critical things to say about George Hagopian and what he claims to have seen. Now, Alfred and I agreed to do this without me rehearsing any of this. So Alfred doesn't know what her specific objections are. So I'm going to share these for the first time to Alfred. But Alfred, like you told me, you've heard objections before. So, maybe none of these are going to surprise you because you've had them in the past from other sources. So go ahead. Were you going to say something?
No,
Okay.
I'm
Okay, here we go.
fascinated. I'm anxious to hear these.
Now, understand that Mary's conclusion is that there is no hard evidence that Noah's Ark is on Ararat or anywhere else. Does that mean that she doesn't believe in Noah's Ark? No. She believes in Noah's Ark. She just doesn't believe that there's any conclusive proof, hard evidence, which, in all fairness, we have wood that may or may not be from Noah's Ark. We have eyewitnesses. We have, which some would question one way or the other, whether they're telling the truth or not. We have photographs that no longer exist that would show Noah's Ark. All we have is the people who have seen the photos and described them and actually, in a few instances, had them drawn or drew them, So, in all fairness, Mary is right. There is no hard evidence, okay? Conclusive proof. That's not going to happen until it's found.
Yeah, you know what? there are no photographs of the crucifixion of Jesus Christ.
That's true.
So we have no hard evidence that there was a Jesus or a
Good point.
crucifixion or a
That's right.
resurrection. You know,
You know,
we don't have any photos of Adam and Eve either.
no. So you have to believe something, right? You either believe Moses or you believe Charles Darwin or Charles Lyell, the father of geology from almost 200 years ago. Do you believe those two or do you believe Moses? That's really kind of what it boils down to in a way. But okay, when you were with Hagopian, this is what she said he said. That's the reason why I'm talking to you, Alfred, because she never consulted you, I'm assuming. She never contacted you while she was writing the book. Okay. All right. So she's going off of information that's been documented either in that book, Explorers of Ararat, or things that Rene Nurbergen, who also interviewed Hagopian, said. And so here we go. She said that Hagopian said that it looked like 1,000 feet long. And I think you've told me that as well.
That's correct. That's correct.
But she says that Hagopian said that it looked like it was 600 feet wide.
No.
Okay. If it was 1,000 feet long, using the 6 to 1.
Maybe 600 feet long, but not wide. Remember, his first language was not English.
Right.
And you could confuse a word or two here or there. I had to work very hard to understand him. And
Okay.
anyone who has not lived in another country like I have and knows how to speak to people whose first language is not English, you have to work hard and repeat your question. And sometimes he got irritated at me. And I told him, Uncle George, with all due respect, I have to be sure that your evidence is accurate. Every word, I must understand every word.
Gotcha. So when interviewing Hagopian, and you mentioned it just now, she said that there were times where he was irritated with some of the questions that he was being given, not by you necessarily, but by others.
No.
And
Right.
And so what he would do is answer them by either withholding information because he didn't want to give it. I don't know.
Right.
Okay. I don't know if he gave any misinformation, but that's true. He did do that. He got irritated with some of the people.
Yeah. Yes, I was there. I introduced him to everybody. All right. And then some of those people that I introduced him to went out without me, and they kind of irritated him. He didn't trust them, especially the president of Search Foundation. And later, he did not trust Rene Nurbergen either.
I see.
He kind of, I was there with Rene and George Hagopian the first time when I took Rene out to Eastern Shore, Maryland, to his home out there. But sometimes he wasn't feeling too good, but you pressure him in the wrong way. He had an uncanny ability to sense if you were there with all sincerity and wanted information, or if you were there to make money off of him and write a book. This is one reason I think I have not yet written my book. I have seen so many of my friends come out to Mount Ararat, and then the first thing you know, after they've been halfway on the mountain or with us, asking us all questions, the first thing you know, you see them on TV. They have videos and they have their books and they're making all kinds of money. I have found also some of my friends who are down on what they're not up on. Mary has never been up the mountain that I know of. She has never seen or spoken to Hagopian or Ed Davis, who are the most reliable eyewitnesses possible. They've both passed lie detector tests. What's that? PSC? Something like that?
Yeah. Yeah.
The police use.
The PSC.
And there are some others among my friends that I could name who are always doubting everything, and they make a lot of money on this.
Well,
she's one of them.
Yeah, she went on to say that because he was giving misinformation to, and it's like this, these are ARC researchers that he's giving misinformation to. I'm just trying to emphasize it the way it came across in the book, you know. Therefore, his testimony is unreliable. And when asked a expert on the PSE type of it's a voice stress analyzer, folks, that they took his recorded messages and ran them through this voice analyzer to see if there was stress in his voice, nuances in his voice. And one of the so-called experts that she asked how accurate it was, he said 38%. And her conclusion was George Hagopian's testimony is untrustworthy. Let's continue, okay? Because it gets interesting. Hagopian, at one point early in his life, lived in is it town or village of Van?
That's right.
Okay.
He was born in Van, at Lake Van.
Right.
Near Octomar Island in southeastern Turkey.
Right.
Just north of Syria and Kurdistan.
Now, what Mary goes on to say is that at some point, George and his uncle either walked to Mount Ararat in 7.5 days, went up the mountain, came back down, and then walked back to Van, or they transported by truck in 1902. You know, she questions that. All the sheep that they had so that they could eat at the base of Mount Ararat. She says that doesn't make any sense at all because around Lake Van, you've got all this lush, foliage, and there's hardly anything there at the base of Mount Ararat. Therefore, why would they even bring the sheep from point A to point B? Also, she made it sound like that when they went to Ararat, either they had to transport everything over, and they don't know how they did that. They don't know how sheep could stay in line to walk the 65 miles to the base of Ararat, or if it was him and his uncle that they walked from Van to Ararat and then up Ararat and then down and then back to Van. They walked themselves with a donkey. So there's some logistical questions here. He
never said anything about a truck or anything like that. No, they had donkeys, horses, sheep, goats, and their wives, women, a large group of people who went every summer. Now, Van was very dry. There was a drought for 4 years during that time. And geologists have given us the dates. I don't have that in front of me, but it's exactly the time when Hagopian saw the ark completely exposed. The ice and snow had melted clear down, and there was the ark sitting, resting on this ledge over the George, the Ahura Gorge. And from there he could see right to Yerevan, which is Armenia, Russia at the time.
Well, just so I'm clear, however they did it, they were there at the base of the mountain and then went up the mountain at some point. It wasn't like, yeah. Did they move there temporarily? Is that what they did?
They stayed there all summer.
Oh, okay.
I've been there to the meadows. I've seen it, and it's lush grass, and there's water running down from the snow up above, and it's the women made yogurt, goat cheese, and they knitted wool clothing.
Yeah.
They do what women do, you know.
She mentioned
and
that.
The men were guarding the sheep from wild dogs. It was a very hot summer, and George's uncle said, Georgie, this may be a smooth year. This is a year maybe we can see the Holy Ark. So he took little Georgie, who was 8, and they climbed another day or so up the mountain into the glacier area above the Parrot Glacier to Abic 1 Glacier. I have maps and so on that I can point it out to you. And there he saw the ark the first year. 2 years later, he went back, saw it again, but it was being covered by ice and snow. It was still uncovered enough to see it, but it was being covered.
Okay. So she was making, again, she's looking for anything that doesn't seem plausible. And that is that they went up part of the mountain with a donkey. And then we're supposed to believe that with some gear and a 8-year-old on his back, he was going to climb the rest of the way to 15,000 feet with a small boy on his back. Do you see what I'm saying? She's
No. Georgie was a very, very strong boy. He later became a wrestling champion in Turkey. And that's the national sport of Turkey, is wrestling. He said no one ever held my shoulders to the ground. So that's another interesting part of his story. But anyway.
So she's saying, well, they only went up 6,000 feet. If that's the case,
No, no way. He went up different ways. He went past Lake Coop, and you can go around the north side of Ark Rock.
Okay.
And you can hike on up, but he left the women behind in this big pasture land of grass.
Okay.
And water, little streams of water. So it was perfectly what they needed.
Well,
and just the two of them went on up. And Georgie did not ride on his uncle's shoulders necessarily, although his uncle hoisted him up and helped him get up onto the roof.
So he didn't carry George from like 6,000 feet, 8,000 feet to the 15,000 foot mark. Why would you? Anyways, if he's a strong boy, he would do it on his own.
You bet he did. And they weren't carrying a lot of things, I guess just stuff to eat.
Well, listen, Alfred, I'll tell you something. When we were in Peru, and I'm pretty good shape, but, there's also acclimation to being up there, 10,000 feet, But when we were going from place to place to place and the guide was walking with us, it was an off-road, tour that he gave us. We had to walk quite a distance, and I had our small suitcase. This guy's smaller than me. He took that small suitcase, he put it up on his shoulder, and he made me embarrassed. Strong.
Oh, yeah.
Very capable.
Acclimatized
Yes.
to the altitude. Did you go to Machu Picchu?
Yeah. That's where we were.
Boy.
Yep.
Great.
So she said that she searched her husband's files and found a letter by Rennie Nurembergen. Actually, it wasn't a letter. It was actually an article in Insight magazine from 1986. And he basically says Hagopian was lying. He claimed that to see it twice when most don't see it at all. And now this is the thing, Alfred, this is the key. All the vivid details that Hagopian was able to recall about the ark and the journey to get there, and quote, this is Rene Nurembergen saying this, he did not even remember the exact location or how to get anyone back there. That's what Rene Nurembergen said.
Bless his heart, he was my dear friend.
Oh, sure.
But toward the end of his life, he got this same infection and turned negative about Hagopian.
It seems to me that I wonder if any of this negativity had something to do with the second interview that he had with Hagopian in trying to get him to tell him where X marks the spot. I'm just wondering if, he's recalling.
It's possible.
No, I don't know.
It's possible.
But
I never pushed Hagopian like that. Tell me the spot or anything. Just tell me what you saw. And an interesting thing happened. We had paper. I had, typing paper and pencils. That's all. And I started to draw what he saw. And his mind just opened up.
really?
Yeah. I've had this happen to Ed Davis and others. When they, at old age, have these memories, when they see the images come to life on paper, they get into a lot of detail,
Okay.
And he says, okay, there were some rocks here, and there was something. Oh, no, move it. Erase it. No, move it over here. And there were windows like this here. And I asked him, where's the door? The Bible says there was a door in the side of the ark. He said, no, I never saw a door, so don't draw it. Oh, okay. We found out later from Ed Davis, the door was on the other side of the ark.
I see.
Overhanging the cliff. Now, if he had just there, it'd be, there you go. That was overhanging the cliff. Hagopian never got to that side. He would have fallen down and killed himself. It was right at the edge of the cliff, Abikwan Glacier, overhanging the Ahora Gorge, just below the Sahanam Dera and the Black Glacier and so on. I gathered all that from him piece by piece over a year and a half. But he never told me, you go here and you go here and you'll find Noah's Ark. I was more interested in drawing what he saw than actually finding the Ark. I don't know why, but at the time I was
That's interesting.
very focused on archaeological evidence of an eyewitness, period.
Okay. Before I ask you one last question, I just want to, Mary's, when closing out the chapter on George Hagopian, she called Hagopian's account geriatric vanity syndrome. And he and his uncle, she said,
I think she has a good case of that. I think she has a good case of that. Bless her heart. You know, I've talked to her on the phone, I think, once or twice. That's all. I've never met her. But I do know Jim Irwin to be a godly, honest man.
Oh, good.
I don't know her personally. But I know some things that the Turks have told me about her.
Well, and again, folks, we talked about Mary a little bit. We talked about Renee Nuremberg a bit. You know, nothing personal, obviously. We're just trying to lay it out there. There's criticisms on their part. Okay, well, let's go to one of the sources, Alfred here, who's the closest source to George Hagopian as we're talking about that specifically. There's nobody left that I know of that met George Hagopian, let alone interview him or to drew his memories. This is what Mary concludes that Hagopian saw. He and his uncle were at the 12,000 foot level and saw the edge of a cliff, a big rock. That's her conclusion. So let me ask you, Alfred, did George
far above 12,000 feet.
They were.
Yeah. It was far above 14,000 feet where we were with Fernand Navarra. And the wood we found is at 14,000 feet on the Parrot Glacier up above Lake Coop. Okay? Now, boy, man, there were some huge controversies, people trying to prove and disprove. People would say, well, we found Noah's Ark. I was the publicity director, PR director. I was supposed to tell the world that we found the Ark, just like Navarra did for the title of his book, J'ai trouvé l'Arche de Noé. I have found the Ark of Noah. Yeah. Well, if he has, so have I. I refuse to say that. I say, we found wood. Call it what you will, but it is not the mother lode. The wood we found dates and is identified scientifically to be exactly the same as what we found, but what Hagopian saw, fully intact, was way up Abikwan, between Abikwan and Abik-2 glaciers.
So there's no way they could have been at the 12,000.
Western Plateau up there. On the north side of the mountain, Hagopian did say, I could see the mountains of Russia. Those would be the Caucasus, right? The Caucasus Mountains at the distance at Yerevan, Armenia.
Okay.
He could see that from where he stood on the roof of Noah's Ark. And he could
Gotcha.
look down from the edge of the roof down. It scared him, he said. He was very afraid. He could see the fog below him and the rocks and the crevasses. And he was over the Ahora Gorge.
Right.
He went up one time, up the Ahora Gorge on the west wall. He went around to the east side of Mount Ararat, which they call Masis. Between Masis and Sis, sister mountain, lesser Ararat, greater Ararat.
Right.
Okay. And he went through the saddle between the two mountains on the east side of the mountain. Went up, describes Jacob's Well, Jacob's Monastery, and the tree that women tied rags to and prayed for fertility. All of that he describes. Ed Davis describes exactly the same thing. One of the first things I asked Ed Davis years later, 85, have you ever seen George Hagopian? No. Have you heard of him? No. Never heard or read of him? No. So, but he described exactly what George Hagopian saw. They both saw the same thing.
Alfred, do you believe, and we'll conclude with this, do you believe that Ed Davis and George Hagopian both saw the same thing? And as you just said, could that same thing be Noah's Ark? How certain are you?
Yes, and yes. Between 1902 and 4 and 6, when Hagopian went up there, when there was a 4-year drought, then the second time it was beginning to cover, and 1943, World War II, when Ed Davis, a sergeant in the Army Corps of Engineers, was in Hamadan, Iran, and he was taken up by some Muslim devout men from the village in Iran, and he went Ahora village and up the west face of the mountain. He describes the caves and everything. And just like Hagopian had. But Hagopian had gone up the west side also, past Kupgol and Ertulu village, okay? And south of Uder, the town there, and went up the west side, northwest side, to that big meadow where they spent the whole summer taking care of their sheep and goats, fighting off the big dogs, and making cheese and yogurt and clothes and so on.
Alfred, I want to thank you
They
for...
both seem the same thing. Oh, but this is important.
Okay.
Between these two dates of Hagopian sightings and Ed Davis sightings, there had been a large earthquake, avalanche, and the ark had broken. You probably have my drawing of it.
I do, and I'll throw that up there now.
Yeah, and I have a big arrow pointing to where Hagopian saw it in 1904 and 6, And then where Ed Davis saw it down here, about 100 feet down, it had broken in half. And I think that during that earthquake and the destruction of the ark, that's when the wood was broken off and came down the Parrot Glacier and rested at the spot where we found it. What we found was broken remnants of Noah's Ark that's up a couple thousand feet up.
Isn't that interesting? Okay, now that makes sense. Why that wood was there, that is. Right around the 14,000 foot level, somewhere in there?
We were at the 14,000 feet level where we saw it right at the bottom of Ark Rock. It kind of wedged in to the rocks there as the Parrot Glacier continued on down.
Okay.
There was an ice I forget the word, but the ice had built up there and was kind of wedged up against the Ark Rock.
Okay.
That's where we found the wood. We were digging there for a couple weeks with scientists from the South Pole who brought coring augers and found the wood. But that's not the mother lode. We have not found Noah's Ark. We have found pieces of it. Okay, let's be honest.
Okay.
And
all right. Why don't we go ahead and wrap it up for this session, Alfred? Thank you very much. And those of you that would like a free report, those of you who made it to the very end of this, that means you really enjoyed the subject of Noah's Ark. The link will be in the comments or in the description, but it's www.museumalerts with an S, museumalerts.com. And it is a 2-page report with photos from Alfred and information regarding Noah's Ark. Alfred, thanks again. We'll be doing this again soon with a whole nother list of questions.
Okay. Very good. Interesting. I love a challenge. Interesting people who have some agenda and say it's on this mountain or that mountain, or Ron Wyatt, who's also a good friend of mine. Most people don't agree with him, but he's made a lot of money off of it.
All right. More to tell. Take care.